Right. My name is Alex. I'm going to talk a bit about a fantastic little company called Sunday Power with someone with great ambition to make climate action a reality. In order to tackle this subject, I'm going to talk about three things. I'm going to talk about the climate, I'm going to talk about the sun, and of course, I'm going to talk about real estate, because that's why we're here, right? But first of all, I guess that many of you have seen articles like this in the news media lately. So we have drought, we have floods, and we have wildfires at the same time, and we're pretty sure that this is due to climate change, right? But more locally here in Oslo, we can see that there's no doubt it's getting warmer. And by the way, guys, I'm a kind of a rare breed. I love slides, so there will be slides all over the place, so you will twist and turn a bit, but it's worth it, I promise. It's getting warmer in Oslo. We also get less snow days. And it's getting warmer in the world, right? Because we last year, 2022, we hit 1.1 degree warmer than the average from 1850 to 1900s. And what's important about that number is that if we don't stay below 1.5, there's a lot of things going on, right? But looking at the latest IPCC report from the UN, it's kind of interesting to look at what is actually going to happen and how much worse does it get if we don't stay below 1.5. It's a great little infographic they made where you can see that the consequences of not staying below 1.5 and instead hitting 2 degrees. You see that we have Arctic free summer is going to get 10 times worse. So we have 10 times as much ice-free summers in the Arctic. And just for coral reef, this is like, I always get emotional when I talk about this, because this means, like, even though we stay below 1.5 degrees, our children or grandchildren won't be able to see coral reefs. I mean, that's done. They won't experience that. And if we go to 2 degrees, it's definitely done. So stuff is happening, but we've been knowing about this for quite some time, right? This is just like some recent The Economist front pages, but if you start digging in history and start to find where did we first mention the consequences of burning fossil fuels? And I actually found a Swedish physician, Sverre Arrhenius. He wrote, hint to coal consumers, the earth will be baked in a temperature close to the boiling point in 1902. That's a long time ago. At that point, they thought that this will take several thousand years before we will notice any difference. But we started to burn a lot of fossil fuels, right? So so the consequences came much faster than they thought. So what should we do? In the same IPCC report from the UN, there is a long list of stuff that we should do to limit the amount of greenhouse gas emissions. And on top of that list, in energy supply, we have solar. The blue color here means that it's actually cheaper to build solar than the alternative of burning fossil fuels for energy. So it's cheaper, it's better, and you start to think, like, why don't we do that much more? And that's why we're going to talk a bit about the sun. This is a really complicated image, I know, but it basically tells us that all renewable energy comes from the sun in any form. Whether it's the sun hitting our oceans, warming up our oceans and creating rain that creates hydropower, or if it's the sun hitting our land, warming up the air and create wind power, or if it's sun hitting a solar panel and can create power. So it's kind of interesting to look at the Norwegian energy production mix. This is the latest numbers from August this year. We see that we produced over 12,000 gigawatt hours of energy, and most of that is hydro. It's a negligible small part that it's solar today. And what's so special about our renewable sources and the possibility we have here in Norway is that a great feature about hydro is it's actually being able to be controlled, right? It's actually the largest battery we have on Earth. It's 87 terawatt hours of power. Which means that we can actually try to turn this image upside down, and instead of using all this hydropower when not needed, try to use solar and wind as much as we can and use the hydro plant as a battery for those sources, right? Because solar is extremely efficient. This is an image that has been floating around on social media for quite some time, but it's how much space or area of Sahara you need to cover the world consumption of energy for a full year. So it's a tiny, tiny portion. So why don't we build a lot of solar PV plants in Sahara? Well, there's a big problem. There is not much need for energy there, and it's very expensive to transport energy. So that's where real estate comes in. Because solar power can be produced locally, and it can actually create value on the roof for the property owner, as well as bring in renewable energy to the tenant in the building. And it can offload the energy grid because you produce and consume the power in the same place. And we can create all this without any additional land use because we place it on the roof of the building, right? But then you start to think about, okay, but why do we have 0.0% solar installed in Norway then? And especially on roofs. It's actually a quite simple problem and something that we in Sunday Power have thought about for a long time. It's as simple as the buyer of solar PV plants is the different one from the one who's using it in a commercial property. As a commercial property owner, you don't get the savings from the PV plant since you're not the one using power. While as a tenant in the building, you don't want to invest in a solar PV plant that has a longer payback time than your rental period, right? And it's also as simple as power production is not core business for any of these parties, not for the tenant and not for the owner, right? The result, only in Norway, is 50 million square meters of empty rooftops, perfect for solar power production. So Sunday Power want to solve this. And we do that by building, owning, and operating the solar PV plant at no cost for the property owner. Instead, we sell the power back to the tenant at a lower cost, and a slice of our revenue is shared with the owner. And by doing these 3 simple steps, we manage to get the tenant greener and cheaper electricity. The property owner gets a greener building, potentially better financing, as well as revenue from us. But most of all, we manage to build renewable power without any additional land use. It sounds too good to be true, right? But I'm so proud that during the last 12 months, we've proven that this model works and are now building and operating solar PV plants on other people's buildings across all of southern Norway. And I guess that there's a lot of people in here that sits on a portfolio with a lot of buildings, right? And I mean, it's so many roofs out there to build solar PV plants on. And the cool thing about Norway is that you have fantastic data of what's available out there. So you can actually tell how many roofs do we actually have and how many buildings do we have. So we did a small analysis on just scattering all the data of buildings in Norway and looked at only buildings above 1,000 square meters. It's above 41,000. Then you need to remove those up in the north. The alternative cost of power is too low and there is no solar irradiation. Then you need to remove the ones that has not flat roofs because that's the most cost-efficient way of installing solar. And then we did some 3D check that I don't really understand, but the developer team does. But it ends up in being above 13,000 buildings, 38 million square meters of rooftops, perfect for solar power production. It's the easiest, the most cost-efficient way to produce renewable power, capable of producing 3.3 terawatt hours of energy yearly. It's half of the solar goal of Norway. And we can offset 1.5 billion kilos of CO2 each year. And that's actually 5% of the total CO2 reduction target of Norway that we're not even close to reaching. And the fun thing is that since all information in Norway is available, we know who owns this. So please reach out if you are representing any of these companies. We're happy to talk. There was a lot of slides in a very short time, but I managed to cover the climate. We talked a bit about the sun and what the real estate industry can do to make climate action a reality. Thank you.